Welcome back, Rebel. If you're new here, this is where the rabbit hole gets deeper. This is Escape the Medical Matrix, the audiobook by Dr. Vic Naumov. Copyright 2024. All rights reserved. Episode 2. Today, we meet the architect, and you'll never look at your doctor's white coat the same way again. I'm your narrator for this journey, and this is Dr. Vic Naumov, in his own words. Let's begin. Chapter 2. The Architect, Overlords and Blueprint of the Medical Matrix. Denial is the most predictable of all human responses. The Architect. From the movie The Matrix. The Hippocratic Oath serves as a reminder to medical doctors of their purpose and duty as healthcare professionals. But the practices of the medical profession today have little to do with the teachings of Hippocrates himself. Hippocrates was a naturopathic physician. He used natural techniques and natural substances like herbs to treat and cure disease. Most doctors today have been trained, indoctrinated, into a system we call allopathic medicine, one that promotes artificial, chemically-based drugs and surgical treatments, rather than trusting the wisdom of the body to heal itself. The name and image of Hippocrates has been used as a smokescreen to hide the real purpose of modern medicine and its allopathic system of control. Now, I won't deny it. Over the last century, real strides have been made in longevity and public health. But the cause of that improvement is far more controversial than you've been told. Penicillin and certain surgical techniques rightly made their inventors known as benefactors of humanity. But much of our improved quality and quantity of life came from something else entirely. Cleaner drinking water, better diet, exercise, smoking cessation, and reduced air pollution. For all the money spent on painkillers, sexual stimulants, and blood thinners, drugs have had relatively little impact on the true state of public health. Their benefits are sidelined by potent side effects, chemicals poisoning our water supply, and antibiotics so overprescribed that resistance is now one of medicine's greatest threats. Naturopathic doctors understand something simple. Human beings, as part of nature, are best treated with what is natural. Fresh air, sunlight, clean water, healthy food, herbal remedies, chiropractic, massage, acupuncture, positive thinking. These will do more to keep a person healthy than a whole pharmacy full of pills. This doesn't mean medical science is irrelevant. The best naturopathic physicians are careful students of the body. They build relationships with patients around one shared goal, a healthy life, not a lifelong prescription. But the Rockefeller allopathic model, the medical matrix, was never introduced as a healthcare system. It was introduced as an industrial enterprise, engineered to provide a steady stream of profit to the great monopolists of America's Gilded Age. America's medical training system was pioneered in Germany, a nation known for chemistry, pharmacology, radiation, surgery, and hospital building. A model built on drugs, procedures, and long hospital stays. It's gotten to the point where many Americans feel a doctor's visit was wasted unless they walk out with a prescription, a colonoscopy referral, or a specialist appointment offering an entirely new menu of expensive treatments. The medical matrix, allopathic medicine, is purely profit-driven. Hospitals and drug labs are mammoth enterprises, dependent on a constantly increasing supply of patient money. And when profit is the priority, healing becomes an afterthought. It's often noted that the vast majority of hospital care an average American receives in their entire lifetime happens in the last year of their life. The longer a person stays sick and in a state of symptom management, the more money flows through the system. Patients come to doctors hoping for cures. What they receive instead are treatments, because curing advocates actual healing. And healing goes directly against the Rockefeller Foundation's business model of creating customers, not cures. Here's something they don't want you to know. The late Queen Elizabeth of England was one of homeopathy's best-known advocates. Her personal physician, Dr. Peter Fisher, was a homeopath who also treated King Charles III. But in America, homeopathic physicians are dismissed as quacks. Dr. George H. Simmons, who ran the American Medical Association from 1899 to 1924, advertised for years that he himself was a homeopathic physician. In fact, homeopaths claimed remarkable success treating cholera epidemics across Europe. In an 1831 outbreak, allopathic hospitals saw mortality rates from 40 to 80%. In Bavaria, only 7% of homeopathic patients died. The London Homeopathic Hospital reported a 16.4% mortality rate during an 1854 outbreak that killed 51.8% of those treated allopathically. By the height of its success, homeopathic physicians outnumbered allopathic physicians more than 2 to 1. So the AMA was founded as a trade lobby for one purpose: to neutralize the competition and drive the homeopaths out of business. By the early 1900s, they'd largely succeeded. The AMA didn't stop with homeopaths. Any practitioner who treated the whole body rather than one part at a time was seen as a threat, because allopathic physicians were trained to treat symptoms, not causes. This created the godlike, egoistic ethos of the allopathic physician. I know it all, don't question me, I don't make mistakes. That phenomenon lives on today. Ivan Illich, in his 1976 book Medical Nemesis, called this what it is: mythology and propaganda. He coined the term iatrogenic disease, illness caused by a doctor's own medical intervention. Clinical iatrogenesis, social iatrogenesis, cultural iatrogenesis, which saps the will to survive. 1 in 25 hospital patients nationwide acquires a hospital-borne infection during treatment. Malpractice rates in some specialties are so high they're prohibitively expensive. Even Dr. Atul Gawande, a leading surgeon, has called for basic checklists just to keep doctors from removing the wrong lung or amputating the wrong leg. The medical matrix ensures we're indoctrinated from childhood to blindly trust medical doctors. But how can that trust survive when the person trained to heal you is all too often the same person responsible for making you sick? Ignaz Semmelweis fought a losing battle, trying to get doctors to simply wash their hands before treating patients in maternity wards. He proved that childbed fever deaths dropped from 35% to just 1% when doctors did. He was mocked, dismissed as a crank, and died in an asylum, years before hand-washing was finally adopted. Tuberculosis mortality began its steep decline before vaccines or antibiotics even existed, driven by clean water, plumbing, and public sanitation. And in 2014, the National Institutes of Health released a report on a study in India, finding that homeopathic treatment showed real effectiveness when drugs were failing. In 1900, there was one doctor for every 750 Americans. Today, it's 2 or 3 per 1,000. Why the growth, even as entire diseases were eradicated? Because Dr. George Simmons, editor of the AMA Journal, said the quiet part out loud. The growth of the profession must be stemmed if the individual members are to find the practice of medicine a lucrative profession. And that's where the architect enters the story. John D. Rockefeller Sr., the richest man in the world, the semi-retired head of Standard Oil, deputized his advisor, Frederick T. Gates, as his agent for philanthropic endeavors. Rockefeller saw the medical field not as charity, but as a chance to build a monopoly over healthcare itself, one with the potential to out-earn even the oil business. Rockefeller's own father, Bill Rockefeller, was a con artist and snake oil salesman who bragged, "I cheat my sons every chance I get. I want to make them sharp." Biographer Ron Chernow suggested the key to understanding John D. Rockefeller's entire life was to see it as a reaction against his father. By the end of his life, Rockefeller had given more than $500 million to charity. Chernow calls him the greatest philanthropist in history. But it was Frederick Gates who pushed that fortune toward medical research and education, creating the Rockefeller Institute of Medical Research and laying the cornerstone of a medical monopoly. In 1907, the AMA asked the Carnegie Foundation to survey every medical school in the country. The man appointed to lead that survey was Abraham Flexner. His brother, Simon Flexner, ran the Rockefeller Institute of Medical Research. They worked side by side. It seems the person who had the greatest impact on the Flexner Report may have been the longtime president of Johns Hopkins University, Daniel Coit Gilman, who had recently died and who was a leading member of the Rockefeller General Education Board. Gilman had led the Carnegie Institute in Washington, D.C. as its first president. He believed deeply in the German model of advanced education, and his inauguration as JHU president is often said to mark the beginning of graduate school training in this country. Gilman, a Yale graduate, had been an active member of the Skull and Bones Society, an elite group whose ranks have included many distinguished Americans, including both President Bush's. Gilman later co-founded the Russell Sage Foundation in order to finance the activities of Skull and Bones. These activities, which are secret, have been construed by some to include plots to dominate the world by promoting members of the Yale elite. During the first George Bush administration, Bush's use of the phrase New World Order in reference to a post-Cold War world was taken by some on the fundamentalist Christian right, notably former candidate Pat Robertson, as a signal that Bush was a frontman for the planned establishment of an authoritarian, one-world government run by the United Nations. The Persian Gulf War against Saddam Hussein's Iraq, financed largely by Saudi Arabia, added fuel to that fire. Now, a third Bush family member, who built his political career as an education reformer, has declared his own interest in the presidency, with one of the chief obstacles in his path being Yale law graduate and former First Lady Hillary Clinton. It's hard to avoid the impression that someone is stacking the deck in favor of the political equivalent of the five families. Sinister or not, it cannot be denied that Skull and Bones alumni have been famously active in the highest reaches of American society. William Howard Taft, whose father had founded the society, was President of the United States at the very time the Flexner Report appeared. Throughout his long career, Gilman was a founder, executive officer, or board member for many of the charitable trusts that eventually became the Rockefeller Foundation. He recruited fellow bonesmen to teach at Johns Hopkins Medical School, men who would go on to dominate American medicine for the next 50 years. Abraham Flexner had no need for convincing on the German model. It was his alma mater, his heritage, his belief. And the report he delivered in 1910 made its purpose plain, in his own words. Reckless overproduction of cheap doctors has resulted in general overcrowding. The country needs fewer and better doctors, and the way to get better is to produce fewer. Flexner's solution: 4 years of undergraduate study, 4 more years of medical school, expensive labs and equipment mandatory. The result? Medical schools in America dropped from 650 to just 50. Annual graduates fell from 7,500 to 2,500. By design, medicine became a small elite club reserved for the affluent. What followed was total oversight. The Rockefeller Foundation, the AMA, state medical boards, and the federal government, all working in concert. The AMA lobbied successfully for the creation of the U.S. Public Health Service, consolidating every public health agency in the country into a single entity. The Rockefeller Foundation had already been working alongside federal health agencies before that agency was even chartered. Rockefeller's friend, financier J.P. Morgan, had personally engineered the bailout of the U.S. government during the Panic of 1907. Within a few years, Rockefeller was leveraging the full faith and credit of the United States on behalf of his medical education projects. By co-opting the government this way, John D. Rockefeller built a medical matrix system that, in my assessment, has come to shape this country more than anything written in the Constitution. The richest man in the world figured out how to use your money to achieve his purposes, and his family and the successors of his cronies are still profiting from his methods nearly 80 years after his death. The medical matrix exists because of Rockefeller's desire to profit from the pain and suffering of the American people. In 2024, it continues to exist because everyone since 1913 has been plugged in since birth. But fear not, there is a way out. That's episode 2 of Escape the Medical Matrix. Now you've met the architect. Now you know the blueprint. The question is, what are you going to do with it? Hit like on this video right now. Drop a comment and tell me, did you know the AMA's own history, or is this the first time you're hearing it? Share this with someone who still worships at the altar of the white coat. And if you haven't already, subscribe. Hit that bell and turn on notifications so the second this rebellion drops its next episode, you're the first to know. I'm narrating for Dr. Vic Naumov. This has been Escape the Medical Matrix. Stay awake, stay free.